go ahead and go. Go ahead and go. The reality is when we hear the word go, so many things probably travel in our minds. When we think of the word go or hear the word go, it makes me first think of being at a stop sign where I'm waiting to go, but before I go, I look around to make sure nothing is in the way and verify there is no cars coming. When I'm at a red light and I've actually stopped like I'm supposed to, I'm waiting at the red light, only waiting for the light to turn green so I can get to the place that I am intending to go. And then when we are waiting at our turns, whether we're in a grocery store or shopping in the mall, and there is someone in front of us and we're ready to get home with the items that we are purchasing, we are anxiously waiting for our turn to go. It is an interesting thing because also even in sports, as those who run track, those who play competitive sports, we're waiting on the indication to go so that we can compete and hopefully bring home the prize. The word go is used in activities and sports, and when you do something, it's one thing, but you don't do jogging, you go jogging. You don't do fishing, you go fishing. You don't do skiing, you go skiing, and like such with swimming and skating and cycling. No matter which way we use the word go, though, no matter how we think about the word go, when we are going to use that word go, we must do something. The word go says that we must put something in motion. The word go says that we have to make a decision in order to get to the outcome. The word go indicates that we have to do something ourselves in order to receive something. And as we are continuing in our sermon series, capturing the joy of Jesus through John, I would venture to say one of the big questions that today's message will highlight for all of us is, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for God to do? What are we waiting for God to bless us with? What are we waiting for God to say to us? As we looked at this sermon series, we've looked at various ways to come into this with what are you looking for? What are you choosing to do? But today I would like to challenge us on, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? Why don't we just go ahead and go? The text that Pastor Jen has so eloquently read for us and the text that she has highlighted, there are two particular passages that both are connected in ways that when we started planning for preaching, I had no clue how the two would actually connect. But we're going somewhere with John and with Genesis. And so here, yes, as we have heard the story of the adulterous woman read in John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11, we know the story. We're familiar with the story. Many of us have heard this story since we were children. The bottom line that they have always taught us about this story is that the woman was caught in sin and he without sin cast the first stone. It's the way that people have told us, you can't judge. You don't have the right to judge. You don't have the right to make someone else guilty because you got to first look at yourself. But today I want to challenge us to hear that there is a blessing in the midst of her mess. There is a message in the midst of this mess. And here Jesus early in the morning is appearing again after he has already been out with the people. He has now gone back to the temple courts to get ready to gather a crowd and to preach yet and to teach another message. What I love about this is Jesus wants to make sure clearly that people gets the message because he's not standing away from them. He is sitting with them in preparation to teach them. And while he's sitting with the people who have gathered, the people who have come to hear a word from him, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees have had some time to go watch somebody else's mess. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees have now brought this woman who has been caught in adultery, and they're bringing her in the midst of a crowd who actually is coming to get a message. There is a message in this mess. There is a blessing here because here the crowd is sitting waiting to hear a message taught by Jesus, and the teachers of the law and the Pharisees are now putting this woman before the crowd. And in the midst of them putting this woman before the crowd, they are basically saying to Jesus, in the law that Moses has commanded, we got to stone her because she has been caught in this act of adultery. And the reality is, when they're doing this, they are really bringing this woman before Jesus, not really because of her sin, but because they really want to test Jesus. They're bringing her mess in order to test Jesus. There's a really relevance here that messed me up, because as I was beginning to study this text before I could even get to the messiness of them bringing this woman, it was very interesting to me. While everyone else was gathering and getting ready to go sit and be taught by Jesus, that the teachers of the law and the Pharisees didn't think it important to be where they are. They're out going looking for somebody else's sin. They're out there waiting to see who's messing up. They're out there looking for someone else's guilt. And in the midst of this, they're trying to trap Jesus. But it was never about the law. It was never about the woman's sin, because what we know about the law of Moses when it comes to adultery in Deuteronomy and in Leviticus, it basically says if a man commits adultery against his wife, if they are caught, that both parties should be brought before the court. So if it was all about the law, they should have brought the person that was with her, because we know that she was caught in the act, right? It says she was caught committing adultery. But it wasn't important to bring the other party. It wasn't important because the story really isn't about her sin. Oh, what you mean it's not about her sin? Because here's the reason. They were looking for a reason to try Jesus instead of focusing on the fact that Jesus had already been a blessing amongst them and how he was getting ready to bless them next. Jesus was getting ready to bless the teachers and the Pharisees. He was getting ready to bless the people who had came early in the morning to get a sermon. Jesus was getting ready to bless everyone who was gathered, because it was a place and a season where there is a blessing in forgiveness. Yes. And so Jesus, after he has looked at this, and now they want to challenge Jesus. When most of us get challenged, we go to explain. But Jesus does what many of us need to start to do. And sometimes when somebody's trying to challenge us, sometimes we just need to ignore it. Because that's what Jesus does. I researched and I looked. There's some other preachers in here. I've been trying to find out what the words were. But the text and the study says that nobody really knows what the message was. It was just his way of stop listening to what they're saying. He was trying to make sure that he did not help them trap him. And so he is not listening to what they're saying. And like people who want to get their way, when they don't get the answer they want, they keep challenging him and they keep questioning him. And Jesus continues to write on the ground. And then when they question him again, he stands up, he straightens up, and he says, let one of you who haven't sinned, let one of you have had done nothing wrong, cast the first stone. I know it says throw away in the NIV. Every now and then King James works for me. Let you without sin cast the first. Let you who've been so righteous cast the first stone. Let you who've never been in the midst of a mess cast the first stone. Let you who have never been broken because you did something in the dark and thought no one would ever see it cast the first stone. Let you who are clean and not in a mess cast the first stone. And then he goes back and he writes again. He writes again because now he's said his point. And he doesn't need to continue to argue or debate the fact that there is nothing wrong with this woman. She just got caught up. But this time when he stoops down to the ground and they hear that he's not going to say anything, all of a sudden a shift has happened in the midst of this. All of a sudden, the elders and the older of the leaders have decided, well, maybe, just maybe we need to leave this alone. Just maybe we need to walk away. The youthful elders and the younger elders follow suit. And now Jesus straightens up again and then turns to the woman and asks the woman, where are they? Those who had so much time to catch you in the midst of your mess. Where are they? The ones who were going to bring you guilty and the ones who were going to go ahead and bring your sins to the forefront. Where are they? The ones who brought you to stand in shame and guilt. Where are they? And the woman says, when he says that, he says, has no one condemned you? And she says, no, sir. And he says, neither do I. Go now and leave your life of sin. The blessing of this text is we can get excited that there's a blessing of forgiveness, but we can also get excited because the real blessing in this text is that Jesus is here to preach and teach a message, and now he has a real life sermon on forgiveness. So now all of those who are gathered are being blessed by the lesson of forgiveness. All of those who were sitting there are being blessed by realizing that even though this woman was caught in guilt and shame, she was blessed by the one who can forgive her. This woman is blessed with forgiveness. She's blessed with forgiveness. So how in the world does this match what you're saying? The bigger question is, what's holding you back? The question is, and the sermon topic is, go ahead and go. After that, her and Jesus have this conversation, after her and Jesus have had a conversation, and since no one else is here to condemn you, and neither do I, he says, go and sin no more. When Jesus blesses us with his forgiveness, the blessings that come next are those that when we make a decision to go ahead and go. The blessing is that when we make the decision to stop living in our sin, when we make the decision to stop living in shame, when we make the decision to stop living in guilt, when we make the decision to be willing to stand and face our accusers, that Jesus is going to bless our going. But not only does he bless our going. When I looked at the other text with Abram, one here you got the lady who is blessed with forgiveness, but Abram wasn't in a need of forgiveness. Abram started out with a promise from God. Abram started out with the promises to be blessed. But the key thing is, the difference is, this woman's blessing started at the end with go, and Abram starts at the beginning with go. You see, the text in Genesis 12:1 and 4 says up front that the Lord told Abram to go and to leave his land, to leave his country, to leave his people, to leave his father's house. And the reality is both are connected, because our blessings are waiting on us for us to go. And the blessing in the text for both of these people is that in order for us to be blessed, the blessing is that we have to trust God when he tells us to go. We have to trust God that there are blessings waiting for us. We have to trust God when we leave what is comfortable. We have to trust God when we leave what we know. We have to trust God when we leave the places that have already tangibly supplied our very need. This woman knew her mess. She knew it. She could make a choice to stay with what she knew. Abram could have stayed in the country he knew, but both of them knew that the blessing comes when you trust God. The blessing not only is knowing that we have to trust God, the blessing is also knowing when to let go. The blessing in both of the texts is not only trusting God, but knowing when to let go. Because when Jesus blesses this woman, she had to let go of all of the past. When God promises a blessing for Abram, Abram has to be willing and ready to let go of that which he knows. That's a place in all of our lives, whether we're coming from a place of sin or whether we're going into a place of calling. We have to know when it's time to let go. And the blessing of letting go, it allows Christ to work in our lives. The third blessing that I want you to know that comes between both of these stories is the blessing that happens when we make a decision to go ahead and go. The crowd that was there with a woman who was caught in adultery, they were blessed because she went. And not just because she went when Jesus told her to go. Imagine what she would have done if she would have fought her accusers if she had not gone. The blessing comes when we go. Abram, in this text, Jesus says, you'll be the father of many nations. The people who bless you will be blessed, and the people who are around you will be blessed. All you have to do is go. So, church, this morning, the question that I ask you is, what are you waiting for? What is holding you back? What brokenness are you still clinging to? What shame are you still holding on to? What areas of your life, even though God has already forgiven you, you want to live with? It is time for us to let go and go. But here, after all of this, it seems unlikely that these two people could be connected. How could both of these stories be a story of blessing? The woman caught in adultery needed Abram to go so that her story became relevant. The woman in the text that had committed adultery needed Abram to go so that the story and the blessing of forgiveness can be learned. The story of the woman who had committed adultery, she needed Abram to go so that she could be forgiven. And the best part about it is, in Abram's leaving, when he leaves out and goes and does what God says. Now remember, Pastor Jen explained this. This is Abram before he becomes Abraham. Now we already know the story. Just quick recap. He didn't trust God a little bit even after he left, and then he got into a situation, but God still blessed him anyhow. Okay, we caught up. And the reason that's important, because why are they laughing at me? Because in Matthew chapter 1, an account of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham, who was Abram. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers' brothers. Why is it important? Is because Abram was willing to go. This woman could be forgiven by Jesus the Christ, who came because Abram said go. He went. And because Abram went, and because, yes, he faltered and became Abraham when he did what he believed God for, and God blessed him, and the nations, Jesus could come. Because Abram didn't let nothing else hold him back. This woman could be forgiven by Jesus the Christ before he went to the cross. Ooh. We are journeying through Lent before we get to the cross. The cross is the promise and the blessing of Jesus making the decision to go himself. And we have the opportunity to receive the same forgiveness and the same Jesus that comes for this woman. But we have to make the decision. Are we ready to let go of our past? Are we ready to trust God? Because when we make that action step, when we begin to walk forward, when we make a decision to go, we are going with the anticipation that there are blessings not only for us individually, but blessings for corporately, that generations to come will be blessed because we went. I invite you this morning to ask yourself, what are you waiting for? All God is requiring of you is to go ahead and go. Some of us have struggled with what God may be asking us to do in this season because this we know. Some of us are struggling in this season of what God is asking us because here is comfortable. Here, we already know how God's going to provide. Here, we've already seen provisions. Here, we have people that we can depend on. Here, we have family that we can depend on. The going is to walk into the unknown, trusting God, letting go of the past. God is asking us to move forward in this season. Some of us need to answer some calls in our lives. Some of us need to hear that God is trying to take you and bless you like he blessed Abram and like he blessed this woman who got out of her mess. He is wanting to bless us, and all we have to do is move forward and go. Are you ready to get the blessings that God has for your life? Are you ready to receive this new blessing? It won't look like what you've seen and experienced before. What it will look like is the blessings that God has waiting on you that he's already promised you. And so for the areas that you need to be forgiven, it's time to let it go. For the areas that God has already forgiven you, but you've decided you just want to keep staying there, it's time to let it go. For the areas where you said, I can't serve and I can't be called because you don't know my past, it's time to let it go and trust God. I'm too old to serve. It's time to let it go and trust God. I'm not worthy to serve. It's time to let it go and trust God. I'm not worthy to take the next step in Christ. It's time to let it go and trust God, because there are blessings waiting on you, and there are people who will be blessed by your going. And so I invite you, as the praise team comes, when it hits you that you're ready, I want to make some action steps today. It's nothing like a sermon that is a call to action. As the praise team sings this next song, next after this is prayer. And so when you know that thing you're ready to let go of, when you know that area in your life you've been saying, I'm going to go ahead and trust you, God. As they're singing, I invite you, because we can do this now, just come to the altar. When you want to physically indicate that you're spiritually ready to receive what God has already got for you in the spirit realm. When you're ready, if you need prayer while the praise team is singing, move forward. Come to the altar. I believe God is about to do a new thing. And I'm not going to sit back and let my past hold me back from what's ahead. And I believe God has some great things in store for us, because we have anxiously and patiently waited, and now it is time for us to go ahead and go.
I'm not going back. I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over. You, all things are made new. Surrender my life. Hallelujah, you have risen with all power in your hands. You have given me a second chance. Hallelujah, hallelujah, yeah, 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 yeah. You are. I'm not going back. I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over. You, all things are made new. Surrender my life to Christ. I'm moving, I'm not going back. I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over.